Once upon a time, there is a kind of game where a guy manages to complete it in the most difficult phase of all, the impossible mode. The company of this game had made this mode to make the impossible and that no one can pass it. However, this guy who is also our protagonist managed to pass it. Everyone was surprised since no one in 11 years could have completed it, and yet after so much effort our protagonist had completed it live. Our protagonist was thanking his public for the test, accompanied him all that time since he is dedicated to streaming. And they saw how many times he tried, but did not get results, but never gave up and kept going with the company of his viewers. Our prota, reading the messages of his chat, manages to see how they are talking about a character who died in battle, which causes him much pity that here had helped a lot in the whole plot. However, the prota could not do anything, and the only thing he said was that his viewers get very attached to the characters, but his main goal was to complete the game, not keep everyone safe. The chat started to tell our prota that he deserved a prize from the company that created the game. The Truth blog didn't want to accept it because the only thing he cared about was to spend time with his viewers. Actually, the product did, but the creator of this game disappeared many years ago, so there couldn't be any prize. The chat resisted that he should have a prize, but the teacher would be denying. Suddenly, a message arrives to our protagonist from his chat, which tells him that it is the head of the company and thanks him for having completed the game without giving up, and here he is the only one who completed it in all this time since they put it in impossible difficulty. The main character didn't believe it. He thought it was someone pretending to be the boss as a joke. This supposed boss kept telling our main character that he had given him hope because no one had ever completed the game and people had started to give up. However, he never gave up, and when he protested to block him because he thought it was a joke, some kind of light came out of his PC, fainting him instantly. Huge explosions start to appear. Our protagonist, who was passed out, wakes up to the sound of them, asking what the hell it was about, only to see that he is in the middle of a battlefield in some kind of war. The prota is surprised to see this scene. Where the hell was he training, hallucinating, he wonders. One of the soldiers treats him like a king. However, the protagonist did not know what is going on and rejects him. A huge explosion appears in front of our prota. Luckily, it did not cause him any damage, but it did mean that something bad is about to happen. Suddenly, spider-like creatures started to dismember all the soldiers, eating them all. The soldiers who were trying to protect the prota got pierced by the spider's legs, until a blonde guy enters the scene protecting our protagonist. The prota says he has seen him before and manages to recognize him. It is his game character named Lucas, who is surprised since the protagonist called him by his name, since he has been serving by his side all his life, and had never called him by his name, but the prota doesn't know what he is talking about. Then he realizes he is locked in his game and says he is completely screwed up. The prota doesn't know why he is inside the game, and he also doesn't know why he is being treated as his Imperial Highness. The spiders are getting closer and closer, but to the prota's luck he has Lucas who is protecting him. This one tells him that the spiders don't act at night. He asks our prota to hold out a while longer for the sunset to come and the spiders to back off. The sunset falls and our protagonist and Lucas are safe, but the same cannot be said of his soldiers because they are seriously wounded. The protagonist trying to assimilate because he is in the game and asks Lucas what date they are in. Lucas answers him that they are in the last of February of the year 600 and something. The protagonist knows that this situation is extremely familiar. A day like the next day they attacked the base of operations. The protagonist knows all that since he spent years playing that game. Something had to stay learning. However, the protagonist knew that the tutorial is one of the most difficult parts of the game, that here is designed exclusively to be impossible and no one can pass it, to always throw you to continue playing the other levels. But this time they were not on the PC, was real life in a game. The prota is on the other hand putting together a plan with strategy to beat the tutorial, because if anything has taught him the game is that there is a way to survive everything. It seems that the protagonist finds him and tells Lucas to gather what they are under his direct order. Had never recruited him, but this time he needed them. Later they are all reunited. The prota knows what a familiar face is, since he spent a long time living with them. But he notices that the healer is in a fetal position. It turns out that he had lost a partner and that's why he is like this. The protagonist remembers how useless he was in battle. It was the most important role, which is healer, and he could not use it because of his fear. The prota starts to tell the plan. The mage, who is good at ranged attack from rubbing, puts him to tank. The tank, who is strong and good at tanking, puts him to infiltrate, and the savior puts him to be a sniper. Everyone is surprised by the bad organization of roles, since the prota was sending him to areas that they do not know. But Lucas would be the one who would send them all together with his other soldiers. The big guy begins to confront the prota, tells him that it is a complete madness and that his plan seems to him a shit, since he was playing with the bad role organization. But the prota takes a piece of paper and tells him what he is doing, insubordinate, with a macabre look on his face, which makes the big guy freak them out a bit because of the command. The prota proceeds to grab a dagger and stab the girl in the arm, giving her as a warning to do his bidding. The process since the role he was given was of a complete madman, and this one is willing to take it how it should be taken. All around were amazed by the maniacs that had acted the protagonist, since how was it possible that this tyrant would be able to lead those who was completely crazy? Suddenly from the stab of the girl began to emerge a kind of flame preventing him from damaging his arm. It turns out that the prota had stabbed because he knew that all the characters had special characteristic. The characteristic of this girl is that she cannot receive any physical attack as long as she has mana. The protagonist tells him how she got this feature. It turns out that as a child, when her village was invaded by goblins, a sword cut her, unlocking this feature of not being able to receive any physical damage as long as she has energy. The girl says that this is true, but how did she know it? The prota tells her that it didn't matter at the time. She goes and tells the big guy that he touches her with fear. The prota tells her that, since he was a little boy, he was a sneaky thief and that he has the ability or characteristics to infiltrate without being detected. The big guy is surprised how it was that he had become the protolo. Repeats again that it does not matter at the moment. He touches the healer boy, who the prota treated very gently, and told him that his role is very essential to the plan, therefore he had to act and tell him about what happened. As the protagonist knows that this boy has a good eye and can witness the death of his friends, the boy starts crying and tells the prota that his friend, who was in the same orphanage as him, died protecting him. The prota tells him to get his act together because he can't die, and even more so when his friend gave his life so that he could live his own life. How come he has to stand up and fight? The prota tells him that if he doesn't want to kill and avenge his friend, the boy says yes. The prota asks him if he wants to kill him, and the boy says yes. Lucas tells the prota that if he has gone crazy, but the prota stops him and tells the boy that if the plan fails, he will give the boy his life so that he can finish as he wants. In short, he will let the boy kill him. This makes him stand up to fight, as sometimes he has to use hate as motivation. The prota stands next to his soldiers and tells him that for once in his life, please, they will listen to him. The plan is to push the spiders back and kill the boss spider that is leading them. The prota goes off in the direction of the spiders, and I know it's dangerous because they don't even know where the location of the boss spider is until he uses an ability called the game map. The prota uses this skill, and a kind of field is surrounded by the limits of the area. This skill allows him to see everything that is happening inside the field on a minimap in front of the user. The prota says that he was surprised to see the bad skills he had, and not to mention his stats, since they were even worse than the skills. However, he is grateful that the map creation skill has stayed. The prota uses this skill to detect the boss spider, which is the queen, but he is surprised because he doesn't see her in his map, which indicates that she is not in the area. The prota is a little uncomfortable and desperate because he can't see the exact location of the queen spider. On the other hand, Lucas is watching our prota and saw her worried face, but deduced that he had already found her. So he took to the attack, finished, and started shooting at the spiders that are in the front line. The prota was not ready, and yet the plan had already started. The prota had already positioned everyone, and the big guy had given him all the potions that summon the kingdom to draw the attention of the spiders. He had also put the girl at the entrance so that they cannot pass if something bad happens, and tells him that he had better defend the castle even with his flesh. The protagonists decide not to panic, as it is not surprising that the spider has not appeared on the map. The prota start remembering his experience playing and says that the spiders in front of him are front line, which means he has a very good defense behind and in front to cover his rear. He deduces that where there are more accumulations of spiders in the middle is the queen. The protagonist had already seen the accumulation of spiders, which meant that the queen was there. He started the mana cannon to hit it against the spider queen and defeat it. He tells the guy with the glasses to shoot, but he was not sure since he had never fired a mana cannon. The prota tells him that it doesn't matter, that if he misses and messes up, he will take full responsibility, and say that he was only obeying the orders of a greater voice. The boy takes the cannon detonator and sees the prota, and the protolo encourages him, telling him to do it to avenge his friend. The boy with the glasses becomes serious, and a skill called Mile Eye becomes present in him. He shoots, impacting against the spiders. The boy who had the spyglass stated that he had impacted against the queen. The prota congratulates the boy, and the other soldiers also congratulate him. He says that as soon as he grabbed the trigger, his body started to move by itself. The silent prota says that this is thanks to his ability that allows him to always hit the target, a very opus skill, which is extremely tricky. But just when he thought you were done, his relief disappears as they were watching how the spiders started to move, which meant that they are still alive. None of them could explain what was happening as they had hit the cannon against them. Letters from the spiders came, the spider queen in a square formation ready to attack the artillery. The prota says that the queen gave the orders extremely fast, since the first thing these spiders were going to do is go attack the artillery line. What makes you know of what you are so well has a superior intelligence to the common spiders. The big guy was behind a tree thinking about Wiria. He only had one position left. He was too scared to go into battle. He is alive as the spiders were getting closer and closer to the castle, about to enter it and wipe out everything in their path. The prota and the guy with the eyeglass are shooting at the queen, still hitting the attacks against the head, but she was not dead yet. The prota does not explain how you or she moving. If she was a spider queen like any other, would have only endured 2 shots and the third would die. But this one did not die, and this one explains to us why it did not. The Proto was scared. He did not find any method of how to overcome this test. No mechanics, no strategy, and much less any idea reached our Proto. He did not know what to do. He was desperate. To make matters worse, the cannon was already reaching its mana limit. They had already fired several shots and only had 3 shots left, and with those 3 remaining shots they had to defeat the queen and the spiders. Yes or yes, otherwise their death would be more than declared. The guy with the glasses was also reaching his limit. It seems that he has solid side effects. However, he was still attacking. Suddenly an insect called Demolisher appeared on the scene. The protagonist had no information about this bug, but even so he gave the order to concentrate all his firepower on it. But it was useless, because this Demolisher managed to break the wall of the castle, giving way to the spiders. All the soldiers released by Lucas decided to defend the artillery line with our protagonist. However, all of them were falling one by one, launching heartbreaking screams and suffering too much. The protagonist realizes the difference between playing and living it in the flesh, because everything was too much and unreal. Behind a screen he did not hear the heartbreaking screams, but when he was face to face he found the feeling. When the spiders are about to go up, the big guy shows up, calling the attention of all the spiders and taking a potion. The spiders focus their attention on him and he runs out to bring them behind a rock to use his ability. But the black Proto, who has very little mana, but it was already too late. When he is attracting all the spiders and wants to use his ability, he is not allowed since his mana is too low and ends up being devoured by the spiders. The protagonist was understanding everything as he heard the sound of flesh tearing of his comrade. He realizes how many people he sacrificed for any stupid reason without questioning, either to get an item past some side mission or even for morbid, and the worst thing is that he was doing it without questioning, throwing thousands of people to certain death just because of his wrong command. All the people around him that he protests are falling one after another just because of his incorrect command. Lucas shouts to the protagonist that he is right, and the protagonist, wielding his sword, tells him that he is right and that there is only one method to finish with these beasts. The Proto defeats some of them, but there are too many. The queen is getting closer and closer to the artillery with her swarm of spiders. However, for his good fortune, the cannon had already reached its limit. The guy with the glasses, who was his marksman, had also reached its limit, since the look is affecting him too much to the point that his eyes were bleeding. However, the Proto yells to the boy that if he can make another shot, and he answers that of course he can. He shoots again, hitting the queen, and this time harder, but this time he had not caused so much damage as to finish her off. The situation is getting worse and worse until one of the soldiers with a spyglass told him that if they had caused damage, because the skin of the queen had detached considerably, stating that if they shoot again they can defeat her and finish her off. But when he is saying this, a kind of green tone fireball impacts against them. The protagonist, while falling, was disappointed since the chance to end all that suffering was gone in a matter of seconds. Luca is worried about the Proto since the impact was too strong. The protagonist luckily is fine, but the same cannot be said for Lucas, as he received all the damage that the Proto had to save him. He is severely injured as a rock fell on his back. The Proto sees him with a worried face and asks him if he is okay. He only answers that he remembers the event 20 years ago. He tells the truth that he does not remember, since he is only a player who has taken the body of the character of a video game. Therefore he has no memory of it, but still tells him to refresh his memory, and Lucas tells him that some time ago he told him that he was going to become the coolest emperor of all. This one told Lucas to aspire to become the coolest knight of all, to fight shoulder to shoulder against the creatures that invades Iran to the kingdom. Lucas says that they are words that they said when he was a child, but still he has them alive in his memory, since those words served him as motivation for too many things until arriving to the point where he is to take a last breath, and that the rock finished crushing him. But the Proto quickly pulls him out and tells him that he cannot die, since he is the main character of this game. He looks around and luckily he sees how the guy with the glasses and the other soldier did not receive so much damage, since they managed to dodge it, but they were still injured. But the same could not be said about the cannon, which was severely damaged and seemed useless. Out of nowhere, the mage girl appears through the door and tells the protagonist that yes, everything is over. The protagonist is surprised to see her, as she was pierced by spider legs and had a man behind her devouring her, being dead still thanks to her ability that she cannot take physical damage while her mana is charged. But sister was about to run out. The girl tells the Proto that he can't hold them back much longer, as their death was approaching. He was soon looking at him with a worried face, but I will be says to act and make their deaths not in vain, as they were too happy to that point for them all to die, and if their death is going to be in vain it would be pointless. The Proto, listening to the words of this girl, gives the order to load the artillery and their last shot. The soldier tells him that it is very risky, since if they give that last shot they will die calcined. The Proto says that that sounds better than being devoured slowly by the bites of a spider, thus the order to load it remains. The soldier tells him that they have no angle of fire since they are surrounded by many rocks. The Proto tells him that it is an order and that his trigger Pobby, the boy with the glasses. The Proto goes to talk to the boy and tells him to make a last shot. The boy tells him what to change, and so he does, but Teen replies that the queen will die with that last shot. The boy tells him that he doesn't talk about that. No matter how hard he tries, no matter how much he hurts himself for others, the world will always take something from him. The Proto doesn't let him continue and raises his voice, telling him that he is living in a damn hell, and that there is nothing that can change it. If he starts crying, it is a hell where his achievements are not saved, a hell where the world is not irrational. The Proto tells him to stop thinking about his dead friend and to be his trigger that becomes his eyes, as he is the last hope he has left. The Proto, while saying these words, an ability unlocks called an indomitable leader, touching the boy in glasses, inspiring him to be his trigger. For the last time he was burned to death, he would die with honor. He protects the boy in glasses. They head to the cannon as they had already loaded it, but he needed it to cool down as this too was too hot. The Proto says there is no time and he himself will take it, but the soldier tells him it is too hot. If it burns, it will not be just any wound, as it is at a higher temperature than human skin heat. The Proto doesn't pay attention to this and take cannon to feel unbearable pain in his hands as his skin was becoming part of the cannon. The soldiers also helps him to hold the cannon burning just like him. The Proto tells the boy to aim and he shoots. They had no angle. They had no clean shot. That style simply ignored the laws of gravity and physics and even the trajectory, to impact squarely on the head of the Spider Queen, exterminating with her decapitation. The Proto wakes up in a hospital bed with burns all over his body. He survived thanks to the glasses guy who uses his healing power. But even or would be, they are so severe that they will leave scars and not recover immediately even with the glasses guy's power. The protagonist sees next to him is the mage girl who also survived thanks to the guy with the glasses. The protagonist asks her how she is and then realizes that she is in a wheelchair, something that surprises him too much. It turns out that a spider in the last moments before defeating the queen managed to damage his back, and thanks to that he lost all the mobility of his body from the hip down. The protagonist is disappointed because the plan he executed did not leave many survivors. Died one of his comrades, thousands of soldiers, and his mage could no longer walk. The Proto blames himself for all this, but the girl calms him down and tells him that he did everything he could and they are very grateful to him, as it would have been worse if he had died. Suddenly enters Luca the room and also do not know that he is alive and even is much better than everyone around. Task says that how is he also. This one tells him that he is too strong knight that is not easily harmed. The Proto tells him that he knows what is a knight of high rank. This one tells him that the remains were taken to a plane to pay tribute and the Proto is willing to get up to go with them. First, they didn't let her go, but she convinces them to go, where she meets the guy with the glasses, to whom the Proto tells her that he did his job too well. If it wasn't for him, they would have died without any doubt. He offers her an amount of money with which she can live all her life. He even told me that he could get him out of living in the countryside and never fight for his kingdom. Since he had the identity of a mercenary, he could be free to defend his kingdom. But this guy tells the protagonist that he wants to know the origin of these creatures and why his friend lost his life protecting him from one of them. So he doesn't want money and much less to leave. He wants to follow the steps of the protagonist. Everyone then goes to pay tribute to the fallen, while the protagonist is remembering that he had to take responsibility since the owner of the body was the one who lured all the soldiers there to be attacked, and he is not to blame. In the middle of the ceremony, the Proto tells Lucas that that day will be memorable for the fallen and that he is going to build a cemetery for them and also repent the deaths not only of those soldiers and not the people that the killer played the game without knowing it. The Proto goes to the castle where he is rewarded with a chest. It was 3 days after they passed the tutorial, and the Proto was heading together with Luca to the main city. On the way to Matara boredom, he noticed how his stats had gone up. But they did not go up so considerably. The character is trash, says the Proto. At least he had the ability of an indomitable leader, although it is somewhat useful, but at the end of the game, since that ability, it serves to make your allies not fall into madness, but the madness magic does not appear until late game, so early on it is somewhat useless. He also gets a mysterious secret ability that is a bit rare to get. Luca tells the Proto that they have already reached their destination, which is the city that the Proto is going to command. The Proto tells how the city where they are going to enter before was one of the most important, if not the most important, as it was located where the most entities emerged, but everything was in decline when the entities ceased to emerge. The soldiers of that city were relocated to other parts of the kingdom to cover the areas where entities appeared, and only left mercenaries and soldiers waiting for their retirement, inexperienced rookies to cover the city. The real reason why they filled those gaps was to have a meat shield to defend the kingdom and the battle line. They even knew it as the suicide corridor or the cemetery of soldiers because they were blinded by money that rushed to the attack for this. The Proto looks around and sees how the city is worn out. All the NPCs of the kingdom had no confidence in our Proto, but he knows how to put them in his favor with monetary methods, and this method are gems that he managed to collect in the Battle of the Spiders. The Proto goes to where his house is and is surprised because it is a huge mansion that far exceeded his old house. Here he receives his servant, this guy who was worried about him, and tells him that he prepared everything to go to rest. This boy in the game was in charge of the missions of the city, either Contruchians, and meet with the people of the kingdom. The Proto knows he can get help from him. The Proto still could not believe the huge house that was his and sends Lucas to rest in his room. The Proto goes to take a bath and the boy tells him that he prepared everything for him to get the combat fatigue out. But the boy with a macabre smile tells the Proto that he did amazing, to which the Proto reacts surprised. He tells the Proto that who would have known that he was going to complete the tutorial that way was something incredible. The Proto looks at him with anger. He knows that he is Ader and is the guy who took him out of his reality to bring him to the game and gives him a full blow in the face, sitting him down. The guy tells the Proto to wait and that he is sorry for having kidnapped him that way. After hitting him, the boy explains everything. It turns out that this world has only one ending, that no one has known what. He has restarted the world countless times to reach this ending, but no one was able to reach this ending. He asked for help from many people, but no one was able to pass it. But everything changed when he got to the Proto, since he passed in tutorial in hell mode and he had also passed the game on PC in hardcore mode. What he had you that you had more chances of success to win this game. The Proto wants to find out what is the ending. The guy tells the Proto that if he helps him to fulfill the ending, he would fulfill a wish. The Proto tries to try and told him that any kind of wish has I be 10 million won. The guy laughs, only 10 million can give him much more than that. The Proto is surprised. First he thought he would give him an invalid check, but there is silver. He wanted to try it since he was only leaving much more than new narrow. He wanted to erase that day of regret. A bad dream he can't wake up from, and he wanted to do it as soon as possible. The boy tells the Proto he has two options and he is waiting for him to tell him them. The first was to go home and live every day quietly without the danger that he is running for his life. The second to help him meet that end, to leave with that wish fulfilled. What it is about says that normally he would have refused the offer and if he were to go home quietly. But there are two things that would not let him, and it was that desire and a question of why not to do it. The Proto accepts and the boy becomes happy, and the Proto tells him that since he accepted he should help him in the right way. The boy tells him that it will be as if he were a dog, and the Proto gives him the first order, which is to sell all the gems the next day. The boy tells him that the market must be closed, but the Proto threatens him and tells him to do it. The boy tells him what he plans to do with that money. The potassium doesn't tell him that he has a vacancy. The confused boy asks him what he is asking and heads to the mercenary guild with a smile on his face. And we'll see what happens in the next video. Hit the like button and subscribe if you like it, and if you want the next part, write in the comments the word defense. Thanks for watching.